This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode contains spoilers from Kingdom of Ash and Empire of Storms, with mentions of the We Hunt the Flame duology and Throne of Glass. Abuse, sexual assault, and grief are just some of the topics discussed in this episode as well. For full extensive list, these can be found in our show notes.
Hi everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the YA literature and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are discussing a very, very heavy book that we just want to say right off the bat, if you've read it, you know it is very heavy. This is A Psalm of Storms and Silence by Roseanne A. Brown. And Jess,
unexpectedly heavy.
Yes. This is what we want to say right off the bat. Jess, when did you realize that sexual assault and grooming was the main theme of this book?
It was probably the second. It wasn't a chapter, but it was like the second overview of the narrator doing the storytelling when she did a flashback of like, now let's return to the boy and the girls. And like when Farid, Hanan, and Karina were just kind of like flashbacks to the past when they would all hang out and play together.
It is unexpectedly heavy. YA through and through.
Oh, yeah.
YA through and through, but just unexpectedly heavy. And so I have read this book 3 times. It is sitting with me still. And there are parts where I put it down. Jess, you and I are in agreement. After the first book, you and I were both probably like, yeah, we know where this is going.
I just thought it was going to be like, okay, on to the next adventure. We're going to go see how we fulfill this prophecy. I was just along for the journey, very much like I think how We Hunt the Flame and We Free the Stars are. You're on this journey to, and then you go into, the duology, the second part, and go, okay, on to the next adventure. And you kind of see how it'll be kind of wrapped up in a nice little bow. This bow is not so nice.
No, it is not. It is not a nice wrap-up bow. It is the ending is the ending is
it's a gut punch. Also,
yeah, it is just unexpected, and also, I think one of the most real kind of endings to a story like this, and this is a very real story. The themes that are covered here are done in a very, I'm going to say delicate way, where it never felt like exploitive. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It wasn't like graphic or like described like that, but you know exactly what happened and the impact that it had on everybody. Yeah.
It was definitely something, you take the magic out of it, everything else has happened, is happening. People are going through their traumas and they're processing it. I mean, we were speaking a little bit before this episode, before we started recording, and we said this book could be dissected in a college level course because of the themes. And I don't want to say that the themes are adult themes, because a lot of the things that are happening, there is no age discrimination. It happens to all ages, and that's reflected from the beginning when there's human trafficking in the village, from the young children to the grandparents, and then then you have the grooming and the sexual assault and the generational trauma, and the list kind of keeps going on. And then even like we go to the City of Thieves at one point, And in that moment, they're saying, you know what, I think Karina's like, we're here to invoke the rule of the thieves or something. And at that moment, they know that we are a refugee city and they honor it as such. I mean, you can't dance around the themes. And where do you start? This is a heavy, I don't think this is what I was expecting from a YA book, especially like the follow-up to a book that we were like, oh, this is fun.
That's exactly right. It's like, oh, the first one's like, oh, this is fun. I'm really interested to see where this goes. And where this goes is just not what we're expecting. I think we can start with Hanan. Let's start with Hanan. So Hanan, back from the dead.
Yeah.
Back from the dead. And if we talk about Hanan, we talk about Farid. And if we talk about Farid, then we're talking about the whole book. So Hanan is resurrected by Farid in the first book. And this second book is kind of dealing with that. And
as a reminder, Hanan is Karina's sister.
Yes.
Like, I think...
older sister.
And she was the first in line. She was and Karina even says, we say it in our episode, but Karina says it in this book. She goes, Hanan was the heir, I was the spare. So I think, who the key players are. And honestly, even with this book, I remember thinking I should have reread the first book and gone into the second book because you kind of forget almost. If it's been some time since you read the first book, you're like, wait, who are these key players again? And I think, having a little background is helpful.
Oh, absolutely. I love the character of Hanan in this book so much. So Hanan, back from the dead, dealing with that. I feel like she deals with it pretty well.
Yeah.
But she is what they call her a lich.
Yeah.
And she's cold to the touch, like ice cold, like shockingly ice cold to the touch. She doesn't bleed. She doesn't really blink unless she kind of makes herself. She doesn't breathe or unless she
was stabbed. She had a sword go through her. And there's the line where Malik was able to stitch her up. And he goes, it's really just because there's no blood. It was just two tough pieces of fabric being stitched together is how he described it.
But I like how Hanan is written here because she's not like a zombie, right? She's not rotting. She's not gross. She doesn't have like a smell or anything. She doesn't eat weird things. She's just normal, fine.
And she's still processing because there's even that point where she's in the garden and Malik and his sisters hear crying and then they go to her and she goes, I'm still just so confused. My last memory yesterday, essentially.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
She goes, she's like, yesterday I just planted this tree with my mom and now here I am. This thing grew. Everybody looks different and I just know what I know. She even asks Malik at one point, he goes, can you conjure my sister? I know it's not her, but the sister that I remember, she's a woman now.
That's so sad, too. She's like, and the walls weren't this color, and the plants weren't here, and I don't understand any of this, and where's Tunde, and where are all these people? And, yeah, it's so sad, and, oh, my God, all of it is actually so very sad. So Farid has this relationship with Hanan, and we learn through the flashbacks that Farid has been in love with Hanan his whole life, right? And Hanan does not love him.
Does not love him, does not feel anything towards him. She even says, I've known that he's always liked me, but and she kind of takes a little bit of ownership in a way where she's like, yeah, who doesn't like somebody knowing the power that you can control over somebody? I get that. But at the same time, I like that it's but you're don't be I like that it's written in a way. It's yeah, you take ownership of that action, but you can't. There's a line that Layla even says to Hanan, what kind of self-respecting adult allows teenage heartbreak to rule 10 years after their life?
Yes. Yes, and like mic drop, right? Like it's incredible because that's exactly right. Farid has done a lot of unspeakable things. He stole Hanan's death from her, right? He stole basically like an afterlife from her. He brought her back without, I mean, I say permission. Who gets permission to be brought back? But like, you know, he had no right to do that. She did not love him, and he was so upset that she wasn't there anymore that he took it upon himself to like, it's gross. It's gross.
It did a disservice to everybody, and like except himself. He was selfish. He was a gaslighting son of a bitch, selfish asshole, all the red flags, treating her like he treated her like property since the beginning. He would say, like, the princes who were trying to get her hand in marriage, he would say, like, who are they? She belongs to me. Who, like, the sense of entitlement to her just because he liked her.
But he poisoned.
Yeah, he fake poisoned. No, he poisoned himself. Mm-hmm. He poisoned himself, and he set it up for the other prince. So the prince, which fucks up an entire different community because he goes, ooh, I kind of feel bad. Now they're not getting food from us, but she's hugging me, so we cool. No, that's not, you know, and you want to tell me that women are too emotionally unstable to run a country? Are you fucking kidding me?
So when he resurrected Hanan, he basically started the end of the world. Like, his toxic love for her is the end of the world. It is just absolutely crazy. So that is like the major like kind of plot that after you read it is just like, that is what is happening. Like, but in between there we get Karina and we get Malik and we have their story, which is like also just completely gut wrenching. Oh my gosh. Karina really goes through it here. Karina's story had me in tears several times. I really relate to Karina, and everything that she kind of goes through here is just so freaking powerful. And I'm just so happy that something like this exists for girls now.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, Where do you start with Karina? You know she's on the run. You know her city, her kingdom is after her because they found out that she has magic. And even throughout the entire journey where she's trying to figure out basically people who will side with her and kind of believe her so she could go back to the kingdom to clear her name, because Farid is spilling all this slander about Karina is the person who killed the Kestrel, her mother. Karina is the person who killed Tunde. Karina is the reason that this is all happening. We can't even get the rightful heir, Hanan, as queen because we still have Karina as the queen in power. And she's just like, I need to get this magical power that is strong. And like, she doesn't even care. She says to the hyena, she goes, I know there's loopholes. I know your tricks. I know, but I need the power. I don't care how to get it. I don't care what the loophole is, but we need to get Farid out of this like tyrant dictatorship that he has over everybody. And they admit him, like, you go, and even Malik starts picking up on it too. He goes, talking about how Farid is the person who he's a charmer. He can, and it's like people who love bomb, right? They get everybody on their side. They have the person that they're dating, and then they even get the friends and family involved. So God forbid, like, that individual in the relationship tries to tell their loved ones, hey, look, like, this isn't a great relationship. I really think these are my issues X, Y, and Z. Now you have the friends and family who are like, no, but he's really good now. But he's doing this in an entire kingdom, basically, shit talking her. And she's like, but no, how does nobody see through the rose-colored glasses of the type of person that he is?
Oh my God, there's so much. There's so much.
There's like so much. I feel like this is going to be all over the place.
There's so much because yes to everything that you're saying, obviously. And then something that you brought up to me earlier when we were talking about this is through Karina's kind of quest that she goes on, which is eventually to get power from Dorleke. Like that is her like ultimate goal
right.
here. Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about Dorleke and how freaking sad that is. I will pivot on that and say that Karina's goal to go to Dorleke is when I was very, very emotional, and then Karina having her conversation with Bahia and all of that. But what I was going to say before is that through Karina's quest, we get what you were talking to me earlier about, which was the human trafficking plot line to this, which is also like very heavy, and god damn that came out and it was just like, whoa, okay, we're gonna deal with this now. And then they did deal with it,
and she sacrificed herself. She was, and then she knew that she was obviously like a warrant out for her, more or less, and she again is self-sacrificing and knew the importance of, they're going to want me, let them focus on me and not the people that they're trafficking to get them free.
Which turned out to be Malik's mother and grandmother, which is just like full circle. But in that moment, Karina meets Caracol and Ife. And they kind of get all together and form like a little merry band and go off to find Dorleke in the hopes of getting all the power together to go defeat Farid. And while all of this is happening, we also have Malik. And Malik is having this very difficult apprenticeship to Farid. And he is going through just this horrible like journey of self-worth and
self-doubt. I can't find, I bookmarked it and I bookmarked it in the audio and I forgot to make the note there. But he says that he has the not self-sacrifice, but he's like describing imposter syndrome, essentially, what he's going through. And, he goes, my people can't just roam these halls. Like, who am I? Doubting himself, doubting his place, what's going to happen after the rite of renewal is complete. He doesn't know. He's constantly on edge, rightfully so. And then and then there's the whole, I don't want to say journey, but his own trauma that he's going through, reflecting on the abuse of his biological father, and now Farid is this like father figure in his life.
And he's trying to prove to Farid that he, as you said, like belongs there, and that he, deserves, to be there with Farid, and that, and Farid can see this because Farid is one of those people. He's manipulative, and he knows that Malik wants this praise, and he uses that to his advantage too. And then he says, Farid says like the thing that you just hate to hear, which is like, you made me do this. Don't you see? Like, I'm doing this for your benefit. Like, you'll be better because I'm hurting you like this. It's like, oh my God, awful, awful, awful thing. But Malik is dealing with self-harm throughout this entire situation, and it does not get any better. It does not get any better until basically Adir talks him down from an unaliving attempt.
So, and which is also so interesting, because I feel like at the end of the first book, Wraiths and Ruin, and then at the beginning of this one, I feel like Adir is the quote-unquote bad guy. He's the one who's infiltrated his body, in Malik's body, and he's the not conscience, but like the voice in his head, like, oh, you're turning a little bit, like, when he has like a little flare-up of like attitude or anger, he goes, oh, maybe maybe you're more like me than you thought. And then I feel like Adir he pivots into no, Malik, what are you doing? You can't, like, he becomes this conscience of sorts and grows this affinity. And maybe, like, talking this out, maybe it's because of the loss of his kid, that Bahia gave up and sacrificed. And so he's constantly had to live with this turmoil of not having a son, and has maybe taken Malik into that son of his.
And also it's Adir says that he doesn't have, like, human compassion. He doesn't have, like, human feelings, but being tied to Malik and Malik having such unique experiences with, like, self-doubt and anxiety and, like, depression and all of these things has, like, kind of forced him to have these feelings that he didn't have before, and that has, like, humanized him a little bit, which I kind of find interesting, because when Malik taps into Adir's power, he pulls kind of this, like, I'm going to say evil, but that's not really what I'm saying. This kind of, like, vengeful, I think maybe is the word. Like I don't care about their pain. Like, I need to do this, and I will do it any way that I need to. And, like, this power is giving me this ability, and I'm going to use it. So, like, kind of that. And Adir is like, no, you can't do this. Like, pull it in. And then Adir does make a sacrifice and does sacrifice himself at the end so that, they can all live. But it's all very interesting. It is so much deeper than I thought that it would be going into it.
Oh, yeah, and I think it's interesting. Like you said, you read it the first time and you go, I put it down, and then you read it a second time, and then you read it a third time to prepare for this. And do you feel like you pull something different each one of those reads, or it just kind of cements everything further in?
No, I pull something different from each of the reads. This time I pulled the like beast part of it kind of from it. That's what I kind of pulled from this time. But it's just so very powerful, and, like, so many different ways here too. Just, oh my goodness. So we should then talk about Karina and kind of Karina's, like, emotional state, because I find it so very powerful. So Karina has all of these adventures, and she's kind of dealing with, like, I need to control my power, but everything that I do, like, I destroy, but also I need to, stand up and fight for things that I believe in, and, like, fight for something instead of against everything. So she has her band, and she finds out about Dorleke, and she deals with Mohammed Smallclaws, which is very scary.
She reminded me of Baba Yellowlegs.
Yeah, very much so.
But then when they were describing her legs, I can't think of his name right now. I just watched Monsters, Inc. Like the head monster, like the CEO.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Waternoose. Yeah. He with his legs. Like, that's what I'm imagining, but in, like, a centipede capacity.
So if we're talking about that, we have to talk about Malik and Karina being, like, dream connected here, right? Yeah. Like, that whole thing.
Like, they're whatever happened, the thing that happened in the first book connected them, where they still have, like, not a telepathic, but, like, in a dream state, or, like, in a life or death situation, they're connected.
Yeah.
And they could, like, sense that.
Yeah, and they can sense that. So Karina is in a panic because she's dying at Mommy Smallclaws, so she calls out for Malik, and he comes and, like, kind of rouses her, because he can't actually, like, do anything. Mm-hmm. But he kind of, like, rouses her, and she kind of frees herself from Mohammed Smallclaws. And they go to Dorleke, and in Dorleke, Karina talks to Bahia, and this whole scene is so heartbreakingly sad. Like, I oh my gosh. Did you, I don't know if you had the same reaction to this as I did.
Probably not. I mean, I know we didn't, but I was just, It's so sad. And I remember reading it, and there's this line. Karina's going to Doraleke, asking for the power so she can go back, defeat Farid. And Bahia goes, the power you seek exists. Because she was like, does this power exist? I need it, blah, blah, blah. She goes, the power you seek exists, but you are not to access it. So it has been decided, and so it shall be. And tying that in with the fight that she was having with Dedele on like page 89 or something it was, she goes, she knew with gut-wrenching certainty that she did not want to die, even if it meant every other person in Sanande could live. So at the beginning of the book, she knew she needed to sacrifice herself in order for like the bigger picture. You know, it's the whole like sacrifice one person to save everybody, or like who's to justify that one person is worth all these lives, right? And in that moment, she has that, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And it just, Kingdom of Vash spoiler, it's like with Aelin when she was like, wait, I don't want to sacrifice. Like, I've been sacrificing my entire life. I don't want this to happen. And then she has the conversation with Bahia and Doraleke, and it just reminded me, and we just refinished the ending of Empire of Storms earlier this week with one of our friends, and it was just it was all on borrowed time anyway. Like, her ancestor, and it's the part where I get so mad, and I still get mad at Nehemia, is that her ancestors planned her death before she even got to live.
Yeah, and so that, yes, obviously, very, very sad. Very, very sad. So that is the takeaway from that scene. The part that makes me, like, that kind of really gets me, though, is that Karina is like, is that all I'm good enough for? Like, that's all I'm good enough. Like, I have done everything. Like, I've done everything you've asked me to. I defeat the warrior. I did this. I checked all the boxes. I ticked all the things. I made it here.
I did what you told me to do.
Why isn't that enough? Like, why am I not good enough to, like, do the thing that you have, like, set precedence for, that I could also do? And it's like, no, you are, that's not your path. You have this one thing that you can do that nobody else can do, and it is to, like, fucking die. And it's just like, gah, it is such a gut punch. And Karina is like, so, like, what is it all for then? Like, why is that, like, and then she processes that, like, to the end of the book. And at the end of the book, when she's with Hanan and Farid, she kind of says, like, you know, I'm not lying. I am ready. Like, I've made peace with it. But that it's like the middle of the book that she's dealing with it. And it's just so hard because then she has this, and Karina feels like it's like a rejection. Right? Like, it's a rejection from her ancestors. Like, she's not worthy.
And if you think, not only is it from her ancestors, she's felt rejection through her whole life, up until and still after her mother dies in front of her. And she even she tells her mom, like, was I ever good enough for you? You were never going to love me. And she is, you know, recounting those being her last words as, you know, the coup is happening when she watches her mother die.
And what is also very interesting is that when, so I should say, we have not mentioned this, a very biblical thing kind of is happening. There are plagues happening.
Omens, yeah.
The omens are happening.
Yeah, there's omens happening through this whole thing.
Happening while all of this other shit is happening.
There's 4 omens: the locusts, the storms and earthquakes, the plague, and the beast.
Like, all of this shit is happening, and it's all really awful. So towards the end, when Karina has the plague, she is hallucinating her father and her mother, and all of the scenes with her father are absolutely horrendously heartbreaking, and I will not speak on them, and I will start crying. But the scenes with her mother are so intense because even in Karina's hallucinations, she cannot even hallucinate her mother, like, being proud and, like, accepting her and, like, saying that she's enough. Like, even then, it's just, like, disappointment.
Because when she, like, joins her on the balcony in the one scene, she's like, well, what are you doing here? Like, you're bothering me. I could not deal with you right now.
It's just so heartbreaking. Oh my gosh, it's so heartbreaking. Yeah, there's also, so that happens at Dorleke, and Karina gets no power because, like, the power, is inside of her, all of this, but, she has to go tell her friends, like, I didn't do it. Like, there's...
Yeah. And that's when Caracal is like, I knew it. Like, why did I? Because it was in that moment where he goes, look, if you get it, great. Like, I get something out of it. And if I don't, this is what I want in return. I get to bring you to Farid and I get to claim the bounty and blah, blah, blah. Like, I get it. Like, set yourself up. Prepare for yourself. But then along their journey, you realize he believes in her. He believes her as the queen and follows her as such. And she's already feeling that I've let my ancestors down. I'm not good enough for my ancestors. And now I've let these people who believed in me and put their trust in me down.
Yeah. And then they kind of like, oh my gosh. But what happens here is, Afua binds herself in like a moment of pure, like, undiluted panic and fear
because Farid's sentinels or something, they found them at Dorleke. That's what's happening. So they're, like, in this state of panic. They need to get out, and there's only 3 of them.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. Like, there's
4: Afua, Ife, Caracal, and Karina.
Yeah. And they're stuck. There's no way out. So Afua, in like blind panic, puts on the headdress and binds herself as the guardian to the moving city of Dorleke. And it is just like, it's a tragedy. She is a child. She's a literal child that now is immortal and is the immortal guardian of this. I'm going to say dead city only because, like, there is no one there. Like, there's just butterflies that bite people. That is a fact.
That, what it reminded me of? Because I love the female friendships and the sisterhood and everything that's depicted here. And there's a line that Afua says, where she's like, besides, and this is before she becomes like the new guardian of Dorleke, she goes, besides, us Zuenji need to stick together. Because I think her and Karina's like, you can't leave your family. Like, that's your family. And then she goes, Afua goes, besides, us Zuenji need to stick together. My family has one another. You have me. Like, she knew that Karina didn't have anybody at that. So she's like, I'm your family now, and treated her as such. And it reminded me of Maeve and Amy's friendship in Sex Education, and like especially like in season 3 where she's like, we both have shitty like, let's be each other's family. And it just reminded me of their friendship, and that Afua has been connected to Karina since the beginning, and Karina has made it known that nothing should happen to Afua. She is not to be touched. She is like treat her like me, basically. And she did this thing for she wanted everybody to be okay, to be a guardian, to be, she just did it for everybody. And how selfless.
And I'm thinking to the epilogue, and she's still there. Like, there's no loophole there.
The only thing that we know, there is no loophole, because the mama, why can't I think of her name now?
Mohammed Small Claws.
Small Claws. I was going to say Yellow Legs.
No.
She said, like, I was trapped here for thousands of years, and the only way they got the key, because the key was in her, and she ate people, was being like boiled in rosemary, and then the key popped out.
Yeah. God, it's so sad. It's so sad. Okay, so all of these moving parts, right?
All of this is happening.
All of this is all of these moving parts are happening. It ends up happening that Karina, she surrenders. Karina surrenders, and she is brought to Farid, and she is brought to everybody, right? This is before she gets sick, and she's in the dungeons, whatever, and she's brought out, and she has, like, a night with Hanan, and
she's like, I want, because she's begging she's like, I'm happy to do it, and then Hanan steps up to say, like, well, I want one more night with my sister, like, and she plays into Farid's obsession with her to, like, grant her this, to be like, but please, like, she knew that he wasn't going to give it to her, but to anybody unless Hanan asked herself.
And I'll bring it up because it's important after, but so Hanan has this night with Karina, and Karina and Hanan kind of have it out, right? Like it's oh my gosh.
She like they go back and forth, and Karina is like, I don't know the bullshit that Farid has been telling you, but I swear on both of our parents' grave, I didn't do anything to Mom. That was all Farid. So I don't know what he's been telling you, but I can tell you now you have two different truths. You decide who you want to believe, because you've always trusted him. You've never trusted me. You've always favored him. Well, here you go.
And then Hanan is like, it's not like that. It's more complicated than that. And then she kind of gets into the like gross kind of grooming part of it. We kind of get to see a little bit more of that. And
she tries to, like, brush it off, which I'm sure, like, that's not, Hanan's not the only person who tries to, like, dissuade and downplay what's actually happening. She's like, oh, well, we were friends, and, like, I kind of just brought it up, and, and friends do that, right? Like, she tried to kind of dismiss it because that was her way of handling what happened.
And, and to be so young, it's just so gross. It's so gross. But it is through that conversation that we kind of really get more of Hanan there. And then Karina immediately falls sick, and then we get Hanan and Aminata to get the plot to get Karina out.
And would you say that that's also the turning point where Karina stopped thinking of Hanan as, like, she was like, that's my sister? Because before, when Hanan was just kind of standing there in kind of like a frozen state, I still think she's, like, in a state of shock with how she's processing things, especially with her abuser right in front of her regularly. Karina tries to tell Hanan, I know you're not my sister, because Farid even hits Karina at one point. Karina says to Hanan, I know you're not my sister, because my sister would never let anybody lay a hand on me.
You bring up a really good point. I'm not sure when the turning point is, when Karina kind of realizes that, yeah, that is my sister, except when they're, like, fighting up in the air and she sees the eyes, that is, like, a definite turning point.
Yeah.
But you bring up the point with Hanan not only has to, like, deal with Farid, but you're right. He is in her face 24/7. He is isolating the absolute shit out of her. And every time that she shows any little hint of independence, he is angry at everyone that allowed it to happen. And to her, he's like, well, maybe that wasn't the best thing. Tell me next time, like that kind of situation. So when you say that, like, she is in a state of shock, yeah, because when she explodes at him right before she kills him.
Okay, because there's the exploding right after Layla was like, let me tell you something.
But, like, the exploding, like, right before she kills him, though, but, like, she doesn't want to be touched by him, right?
I said don't touch me.
Yeah, and like, there's a line that says, like, she's, like, revolted by his touch. So knowing that, and knowing that she had to throw herself at him to get Malik and Karina out, is just so much more like...
And Malik sees it too.
Yeah.
I don't, because I think, was he in the room when they were like going back and forth with their stories? Because
no, he wasn't, but he's been in there with Farid and
he knows. Oh,
yeah.
Because there's a line where he walks in on Farid and Hanan, and there's a line in the book where Malik picks up on Hanan giving him some sort of look like, please do not leave me alone with him.
Yeah.
And then they like flash forward, and then you see that he's trying to get Karina out, wrapped in a mummy wrap of sorts, because she quote unquote has the plague. But we can't have Farid know that it's Karina, all the back and forth. And that's when she's like, she's doing everything to distract him to get her out.
And Malik is like, gods only know what that cost her to do,
she had to keep going into the crook of his neck, into his chest, and he was just as revolted.
Yeah. Oh my god. It's so much. And then Malik then has his very symbolic journey of climbing the mountain, right? He is with Karina, and he carries her up the mountain to his home, and his home is decimated because of the omens that are happening. And then he finds them in the crystal cave, and Malik has this really great moment. It's one of my favorite moments with Malik. And we haven't even really talked a lot about Malik and his apprenticeship part, but this in the gem part, in the gem cave at the end of the book, when Malik confronts the elders that abused him as a child and tried to beat the magic out of him, that was so powerful, because Malik is like, don't you recognize me? I think about you every single moment of my life.
But abusers don't. That's a notorious thing. It doesn't, because they don't see anything that they did wrong.
Yep. And Malik is like, you don't even know my name. You have traumatized me. I will never recover from what you did to me. And you don't even know who I am. What a powerful moment. And then he's like, look, you were right. And I'm going to fuck your whole world up. Bam, illusion, eat shit and die. It is so good. And even Adir is like, yo, you are loving this. Hey. It's really something. And then, of course, Malik is reunited with his mother and his grandmother. And we have that other really lovely, lovely scene of healing generational trauma there, because Malik confesses absolutely everything that he's done. He holds nothing back. And then his mother goes, your father was like that because his grandfather was like that. He did that. And then Malik is like, it's never going to be like this again. This is where, no more. And it's very powerful there. Very powerful. But if you want to, and Jess, this was your kind of thing, you want to talk about breaking generational trauma, I asked you what you thought about Karina and her hair color change.
Oh, yeah. I initially had thought, we had discussed it was breaking the generational trauma because it wasn't just her hair. It was his eyes, too. So I had thought, in addition to that, was there a loss of power? Because, it's
the
trope.
Fantasy. Yeah, it's the
trope. Feel lose your power, self-sacrificing. But she doesn't. It's just not really discussed further, because at this point we're at the end of the book. Mm-hmm. Which it sits with you. It sits with you. It's you just want to keep talking about it, and you want to keep processing at the same time.
Well, and we're not even at the very
we haven't
end.
even covered other things that are so poignant.
There are a lot of other things, but let's talk about Hanan killing Farid, because I love this. I absolutely love this. So Karina and Malik have a plan, right? So they have a plan. They're doing the plan, and part of that plan involves Karina going to the lakes and knowing in the back of her head that if this all goes to shit, then she is going to perform the rite of renewal, right?
I feel like this was just a plan, but the plan was, once she accepted it, she knew what she was going to have to do.
Yeah.
And she was going to she knew she was going to have to self-sacrifice. She was like, we can try this. Not saying it's going to work, but we're just kind of going to pivot to plan B instead of plan A of sacrificing. Just for a second.
Just to see.
Play with just to, if this is even a possibility.
So what that entails, though, is Karina is convinced that Hanan has like the power inside of herself to defeat Farid, because Farid is like very powerful, right? And he's in charge of everything, and he has this hold, as we know, this abuser hold over Hanan and all of this this bullshit. So Karina goes and she's talking to Hanan, and she's like, it does, you don't have to be like this. He doesn't control you. I love you, all of this stuff. And, oh my God, it's just so freaking powerful. So what would you say, the line here? I know you highlighted it, Jess. Karina is trying to get through to Hanan. And
when Hanan's now the beast. Now we're at the fourth omen, and Karina has control of her Wendeline powers, the Wenju power at this point. And they're kind of fighting in the air, and Karina says, you deserve to be as angry as you need to be to heal from what happened to you.
Yes, because what happened to her is grooming and abuse, and Hanan was not able to kind of overcome this trauma to Farid in time, right? And that kind of delay, hesitation there, whatever, turned her into the final omen, right? So Hanan is this beast.
It's really her angry and her trauma manifested into this beast.
Yes. And Hanan and this is the really thing about it. So even though Hanan does the thing that we're all rooting for, Hanan kills her abuser, right? She kills her abuser, but then the trauma and the grief manifesting into this beast, right? Even though as the beast eats him. I don't know if you realize it picked up on that, but the beast eats his corpse. So there's nothing left but blood. Right. That's said. But even though that happens and he's gone, it doesn't do anything.
But that's very relatable. It's when you confront, if you are fortunate enough to have people believe you, to go through the right steps, to go into the front of the court of law, you're confronting your abuser again, and whether they get, whatever their punishment is, that doesn't take away your trauma. Again, just like with Malik confronting his abusers, that doesn't take away anything. How many books have we read where it's you get your vengeance and you're do you feel better now? No. For that second you do, but you still have a lot of inner work and inner healing that needs to be done. It's not over just because they're dead.
It's not over. Oh my God, that is so true. So the turning point where Karina realizes that it is her sister, obviously, it's here because Karina notices that she sees her sister's eyes in this beast monster situation that we have here, and realizes that she's just so afraid and she's lashing out, right? And she's so angry and she's so afraid and she's lashing out. And Karina says, like, you were screaming and screaming for years and nobody heard you. And then just as you said, like, you deserve to be angry.
And I just feel so bad for Karina. Like, I feel bad for Karina because here she is, the little sister with almost a 10-year age difference. Mm-hmm. And she's taking the I didn't hear you scream. There was a 10-year age difference. Of course you didn't. Like, and to take that upon yourself, like, how she still feels responsible too. And I remember, like, in our 10 Things I Hate About You episode, we talk about Kat and Bianca, where Bianca doesn't know about Kat's trauma and what happened, but there was an age difference there too. I wouldn't, her sister was 4 and she was 12. That's a big age kid. I'm pretty sure I'm not telling you my 4-year-old sister.
Right, yeah.
What is happening?
Oh my gosh. The end of this book.
The epilogue end?
Yeah.
Or the last chapter?
I was going to say the epilogue end, but do you have a last chapter end that you want to talk about?
Just when he's like, you are my pulse. Like, how sweet.
It is so sweet, right? Like, it is so sweet. And actually,
I feel you in my pulse.
I feel you in my pulse. Now that you bring that up, do you want to talk about the really, really, really lovely conversations that Malik and Karina have over and over and over again about comfort and consent with
hold on. And that they were, especially, and Malik, like, has the internal thoughts where he would, they would be they would be mentally physical, I guess is the way you can say it, because they're connected mentally in their dream states, and they're having the conversations and they're doing physical things in their dreamlike states. And even then, like, because there's a point where Karina's like, you know what I do when I'm stressed? I go out and fuck somebody.
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, and she's like, it's the one thing. Everything is controlled. Everything I have in my entire life is controlled. It is the one thing that I get to control. And I thought
my
that was
body and who touches it.
Right. I loved that. And then he even made a comment to himself, like it was an internal thought to himself, because then him and Karina start, getting handsy. And he says to himself, he goes, oh my gosh, I'd get so much shit. I'm a boy, I'm a man coming of age, and I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm not experienced. And he goes, can we slow down? Can we keep this above the waist? And I thought that was so sweet. And she goes, you tell me, is this good? Is this good? Do I need to pull away so, like, we can give ourselves and, like, respect each other in our space? The communication's there, we love that.
And then in the last chapter, I think when they do actually hook up, he was like, I don't know. And she's like, I am so experienced. Don't worry about it. Just tell me what you want and I will tell you what I want. And then we will work together.
And if at any point what we don't want or if we need to stop, like, we will. And then who was it? And then, like, they didn't stay the night together because he was just like they
were in like a lemon grove. They were like outside.
So, like, she went back and Aminata made the contraceptive for her. She was like, she's like, my girl was there. She just knew. I didn't even have to tell her. She had my contraceptive ready because I forgot. And then they teased Malik when he came. He's like, oh, sorry. Like, and then she was sad because she's like, here we are leaving and he's not coming to say bye. And she's like, I should be used to this. I one night stand people all the time. Like, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. And she's crying.
She's like, it's fine. It's fine.
Like, relatable, right?
She's so great.
And then he's like, I'm sorry, I overslept. I was really tired. And everybody was like, were you?
Like, his mom and, like, grandma are like, hey.
And they and then they were like, oh, you have childbearing hips. And you know, he's like, Mom.
So funny. And then they were like, yeah, and he was like melting into a puddle. They were trying not to like, oh, it's so funny. I'm so embarrassed for him.
I feel like it was, after reading all of that, it was absolutely the levity that was needed.
Yeah, because then you go into the epilogue and it's just another freaking gut punch. But I love this epilogue because this is the most, like, I'm going to say real kind of ending that I have ever like kind of encountered in a fantasy book. They just fizzle out.
They do the thing also.
Yeah, but they fizzle out. They just fizzle out.
Well, and they say, like, they go from like writing each other all the time to write like less and less, and then it just stops.
Yeah, they're busy. It's years, right? He's up searching for his sisters, and he's like starting a magical school and, you know, doing all this stuff. And she is like running an entire kingdom, like overthrowing the old ways and like ushering in the new ways. And yeah, it just freaking fizzles. And you don't, that is never, ever addressed. Ever.
No, and it's so sad because even in the epilogue, she goes, that's the end of this. That's the end of the tale, not necessarily the story. But let's pretend.
Yeah, maybe.
Here's a scenario. Here's another scenario. This could be happening.
Yeah.
But and then when they were like, they see each other and then they look away and then they're like, do they remember me? Do they not remember? Like,
it's been so long. Yeah. Yeah,
it's real. It's real and it's sad. And, you know, in the end, initially, before the epilogue, they have the conversation of like, I'm going to do this. You're going to do this. We'll see each other again. And when you hear about the I feel you in my pulse thing, and then you know that it's tied to like
marriage,
like a marriage statement, like marriage vows, you're like, okay, that's going to be the epilogue. I'm going to have like, you know, I love a happily ever after. I don't care about the shit that I have to go through to get there. But I like it. I do like it. I also appreciate... I could go two ways, honestly, because then I think of our Gods and Monsters episode, where I'm like, not every happily ever after... Oh, maybe I'm going to talk myself out of it. Not every happily ever after is necessarily... with somebody. Oh, I'm talking myself out of it now. It was a good ending. Because it's still a happily ever after for their own stories, not necessarily for their relationships. I just talked myself out of it. Fuck.
It's very, we talked about this earlier, it's very priory.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, you know, big picture, we'll come back together.
We got our shit to do.
Yeah. Then it will stick with you. Oh my gosh. There is just so much here, because like all of Malik's trauma and his self-harm and his like trying to break all of his generational trauma, and then, you know, and then we haven't really talked about the like enemies to lovers, like Romeo and Juliet kind of like backstory subplot that is kind of happening between Malik and Karina because of their ancestors, because they talk about that a lot.
And you know, you bring up a good point, because they do have, because they have there's a dream that Karina has where she has the dagger up to Malik's throat or something, and she has the internal thought of, I don't know if I should kiss him or kill him. Mm-hmm. And then I can't remember if it was Afua or Ife who's like, who are you thinking about? Because your pulse is racing, and this is the type of Zwenji magic I have, and it's not a normal type of... I can tell that you're turned on. Who's turning you on right now?
That's Ife, because they have the healing magic, so they're able to like sense the like heart and stuff. But yeah, like that's exactly. Oh my gosh, it's there's just so much. There's so much here that I think merits like several like rereads, just because you just pick up on so much.
I feel like this whole book is quotable too. Like the quotes are so strong and they're so relatable. I just think anybody can pick up this book and find something to relate to. There's a relatable quality that anybody can, like, there's two quotes that initially it was like, don't let the past dictate your future, which is something that we always discuss, you know, like you are who you choose to be. Like, yes, that's happened in the past. Yes, it's made who you are. Yes. You know, who you are in the face of adversity just creates a stronger person. And at the same time, it flows into nobody escapes this world without some sort of trauma. And it's also like none of us, we might not talk about it, and maybe we do now more so than like generations of the past. Definitely millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and all of that. We're just like, oh, you know, we've talked about this before. We're like, oh my gosh, I talked to my therapist. This is what they said. Like, we're all going through some shit. A red flag for me would be if you don't have trauma. Why don't you have trauma? For
real, why don't you have trauma? Like, there's something wrong there. That's not right. That's not right. This is the end of this is a duology. There is no more here. I
don't know if I can handle a third.
I know. It's like, gosh. But this is really beautiful, and I would really love to see this in like a limited like mini series kind of situation.
Who do you think would do? I don't feel like it's I feel like this at Amazon Prime. This feels like an Amazon Prime thing.
Yeah. Because you would really need to get the world building spot on, and the casting has to be really perfect. And yeah, Amazon,
like, it's not a Hulu, like,
no.
It's not enough. Like, if you go through the streaming services, I don't think it needs HBO. I don't think it needs Netflix. I think Amazon could bring the value it needs.
Yeah.
Like, not the value it needs. Like, it has substance. It has value. You need someone who can translate that with the budget that Amazon has. I guess that's what I
yeah. Oh, I think it would be really beautiful on screen, and should be, because like I did a bit of research on this. It's not a lot. There's not
most
a lot.
of the things that I found were just reviews from people who had like either arcs or opportunities to speak with the author. But the research component, like, I don't think people are talking about it. I personally haven't seen it on Book Talk.
Nope.
Maybe it's been on Bookstagram at some point with like individual, again, reviewers, but I don't see it part of like mainstream conversation.
Fake Crate.
Oh, okay.
Fake Crate did a
like
box
plushies?
on this. My Instagram has been crashing. I don't think they did. They did a box. I can't. My Instagram is crashing. But Fake Crate did a box about this. But it hasn't shipped yet because of supply chain delays. Yeah. But so I know that exists, but I do not feel that this gets anywhere near the attention that it deserves, and that people should talk about this more, because it's beautiful, it's lovely, it is unique, it blew my socks off the first time I read it. It just blew my socks off, just in ways that I was not expecting.
In the best way possible, obviously. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's deep. This was not the week that I was like, oh, I'm just going to have a light read. No.
But very grateful to read this.
I think we should end this episode as the book ended. There's this beautiful quote from the narrator, and she says, and that's the beautiful thing about endings, for even them coming back together again would not be the end. What seems like the end is simply another beginning.
It's so lovely. You know, I love this book. Jess, do you love this book? Do you like this book?
I love this book. Like, I think I will reread it, but it's not a comfort read by any chance.
No, not a comfort read, but definitely worthy of a reread, worthy of a recommendation, no question, no doubt.
And you could read it, and you could read it audio, you could read it with, traditional reading. I did it with both. And yeah, I'm just a masochist apparently. So feel free to follow us at ACOFAE Podcast on Instagram. We're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.